Introducing the Champion's Mindset, the podcast that gives your inner game a serious upgrade. Join internationally renowned mindset and performance expert, KATHRYN Orford.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back. If you've been on the podcast before, welcome if this is your first time. My name's KATHRYN Orford, and I am so excited you're here. I'm really going to approach the topic that I get reached out by parents all the time about, that really would love their teenage athlete to land a college scholarship. I mean, who wouldn't? It can save you somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 that I'm sure you could use that money in other places. But as parents, we obviously want to set our young people up for success, to do whatever it is that their heart desires. So this podcast is very much about the 5 reasons that talented teenage athletes don't actually land those college scholarships. So shall we get into it? Okie doke. And feel free to comment, by the way. There is a comment section. I'm not going to be able to see it, but please comment and I'll have a little look when I look at the rerun. So here we go. So I work with, just a little bit of background, for the last 18, coming up for 19 years probably, I've been working with all sorts of different individual and team, individual athletes and sporting teams, as well as performers, because I do have a performing arts background. I'm a former professional dancer. Before that, I was actually a talented athlete. So it's my passion is to help these amazingly talented young people to really live out their dreams. Okay, so let's get into it, shall we? We're going to have a little look at the 5 reasons. And in actual fact, at the end, I've actually got a bonus one as well. So there's more than 5. There's probably a lot more, to be honest. But for this podcast, we're going to go over 5. So did you know that there are 7 million high school athletes in the US who have dreams of playing at a collegiate level? But only 7% out of 7 million will make that jump into playing for a college sport at an NCAA institution. Pretty low stats, right? So you've got to be outstanding to be noticed, and you've got to make sure you're not making any of these mistakes that I'm going to share with you. Here's some more. Approximately 2% of high school athletes are actually awarded an athletic college scholarship. So talent alone is not the deciding factor. And this is where a lot of parents do get tripped up, I think. So mindset, once they've got the skills, mindset matters more than talent. I'm going to say that again. Mindset matters more or just as much as if they're talented. College coaches are looking for mentally tough athletes. They want athletes that can bounce back quickly, take on the feedback, not get offended by it, and perform consistently, not just when things are going their way. Do you have an athlete that when they don't play so well, they kind of beat themselves up and they're quiet on the car ride home? You're going to, as a parent, you're going to have to really teach them that as an athlete, then they're not going to play well every game. Speak to I don't know, Nikola Jokic on the Denver Nuggets. He didn't play perfectly every game last season, but he's an extraordinary player. He understands that making mistakes is part of being an athlete. Now, here's a huge one that trips up so many people that I coach. It's all of that negative self-talk. Can you relate? If you're a coach, if you're a parent, or perhaps you're even the athlete yourself. I'll never make the varsity team. Or I'm hopeless, I'm never going to land that scholarship. One of the things I'm super passionate about is actually working with clients and with sporting teams to really teach them to take control of that. They don't have to, do you know that you don't have to live with that inner critic for the rest of your life? Why do I know this? Some of you know this because I share it on most of the podcasts. About 35 years ago, my inner critic was having a field day, chastising me, and telling me I was so pathetic, I couldn't even organize my own suicide properly. Now, I'm here to tell a story, so all is well. And actually, the breaking of me was the making of me. However, back then, I didn't know anyone else had an inner critic. We didn't talk about mental health all those years ago, and we certainly didn't talk about inner critics. I started studying NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, how we program our brain. I started working with Tony Robbins. He invited me on board as a trainer, but at that stage I was busting to be a mum. So I said, thank you, but no thank you. But what I really got out of working with Tony was that I could reprogram that sucker and turn it into a cheer squad. Stop and think about how well the teenager or the players in your team are going to perform when that inner critic has been replaced with a cheer squad, because that's the objective. That's how strong they need to be. They need to take control of that. Neurons that fire together, wire together. It's called neuroplasticity. And when you interrupt the pattern, the moment that you, a player, your teenager has a negative thought, teach them to interrupt that sucker within 5 seconds and replace it with a positive. Because then they'll be creating new neural pathways in their brain. And as I said, neurons that fire together, wire together. So that's one of the reasons that young athletes get tripped up, is they're really, really busy beating themselves up in their head when they don't perform well. They feel like they've let their team down, or if they're an individual athlete, they just know that they didn't do their personal best. Another one that trips them up, well, here we go. This is where the inner critic really comes into play. The National Science Foundation says we have 50,000 thoughts per day. Some of those are conscious, some of them are unconscious. Now, 95% of those thoughts that are going over and over in our mind are repetitive, and 80% are negative. So by the time a young person reaches the age of 18, have a look at these stats. 3,080,160 negative comments. Are you starting to realize where the inner critic came from? The great news is you can change that. Another one is crumbling under pressure. I had the pleasure of working with 2 different clients back in Australia, and I'd love to share a little bit about them, because one of them was dubbed as the next big thing in Paralympics. She was a little dwarf swimmer, and she'd only been competing for 2 years, but she was doing really well. So well that they were saying, oh, wow, this is our next superstar. When she came to me, she was riddled with anxiety because she had all these huge expectations to live up to. Now, some athletes will actually thrive under those expectations, but a lot of them won't. And she was a mess. We had 2 2-hour sessions together before she was heading to the Trans-Tasman Championships. And part of the process that I do when I'm working with a client or a team is I get them to write a script written in the past tense as if it's already happened, all in transformational vocabulary based on their learning styles of their absolutely ideal outcome. I only got Sarah's script back to her because she wrote it, then I tweaked it a little bit. I got the script back to her the night before she was flying down to do this national championships in Tasmania. And I said to her, Sarah, read it tonight before you go to bed. Read it first thing in the morning when you get up. Read it all the way down in the plane. Read it tomorrow night when you go to bed. And obviously I have a 5-part process that I teach called the Inner Game of Winning, and reading the script is part of it. Anyway, Sarah went down to Tasmania. She was in eight events. She came home with 8 gold medals. She did 6 PBs, or you call them, I think, PRs here, personal records. And she shaved 6 seconds off her 200 meters individual medley. Now, 6 seconds over 200 meters, if you swim or run or anything like that, that's massive. So her coach, Jackie, said, Kathryn, what are you doing? Like 6 seconds over 200 meters, nobody does that. And so she then invited me to come and work with her whole elite swimming squad. So that was actually Sarah. And that's Sarah on one side of the screen that you'll see with me. And then on the other side is Brad Dalton, who is a former dual Olympian basketball player for Australia. And I had worked with his under 22 youth league years before. They had never won a state championship. My daughter was playing basketball at the time at his club, and when they found out what I did, they said, "Oh, would you come and work with us? We've been playing together since we were 12, but we've never won a state championship." I worked with Brad's team, and they won from fifth. They were coming fifth halfway through the conference. They won the whole state championship in extra time. And then I was living in Hawaii. I couldn't help Brad because he called out to me and said, "Hey, can you work with my St. Augustine's team?" We got to the Nationals, which is a varsity team, high school varsity team. And I think they've got a pretty good chance of winning. Would you work with them? But I was actually going to be on the plane, flying back to Australia to live, literally as they were going to be driving down and preparing for the championships. And I was busy packing. I said, "I'm so sorry, Brad, but you know what I do. So why don't you do your version of what my version? Why don't you do your version of my version of what I do?" And he did. And they won the whole national championships. Now, in that team that won the nationals, there were 3 Sudanese boys, 2 brothers and a cousin. Now, they immediately got scooped up for college scholarships over here in the US. So Brad rings me and says, "KATHRYN, would you work with my St. Augustine's varsity team, because we've lost our stars and they do not think that they can win without their stars." This is how much mindset has to do with it, right? He said, they've actually got good skills. I mean, he's a former dual Olympian. He knows how to train basketball players, right? But he said, I don't have the depth I had last year, but I have good players. And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll come and work with them." I did. And this is them. They were getting thrashed, by the way, totally thrashed. And of course, the moment that we started working together, we did 3 2-hour sessions. And the moment we started working together, after that first session, they won that game. I teach all of my athletes and performers how to anchor in that success so that they can actually let that, that trigger go, that we call it an anchor, when they're about to do it again. And so they just kept on winning and winning and winning. Blow me down. We get to the conference final. We're playing a team that had thrashed the boys twice during the regular season. I don't think that coach did his homework, because that other coach, he came out and his young men were really, really cocky. And I think they were thinking, "Oh, we've beaten these guys twice. This is going to be a walkover." They hadn't looked at how much our team had been winning, right? So our boys go out there and they absolutely nailed it. They were 30 points ahead at the end of the first quarter. Unheard of, huh? And as you can see, they won the conference final. And I think the second plaque was for the highest point score out of the whole conference, out of the whole season. So teaching your athletes, whether you're a coach, a parent, or the athlete yourself, teaching either yourself or them to really frame the expectations in a way that works for them, that they don't actually end up crumbling under all of those expectations, because it's a huge mind game on them. Let's move on, shall we? The teenage brain is under construction, okay? So they're not necessarily, they can't. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully formed until boys are about 27, girls are about 25. So they're not necessarily going to be able to think through the consequences of all of their behaviors. And unfortunately, in this social media world that we live in, there are opportunities for them to stuff up in a way that is not going to serve them in getting that college scholarship. Because guess what? Coaches, recruitment people are going to look at their social media, not just their highlight reels, what they're posting. So as a parent or as a coach, it's your job to make sure that they totally understand the impact of what they're posting online. The other thing that trips them up, oh my goodness me, we are actually wired to compare ourselves. But when we play what I call the compare and despair game, that is just a downhill battle. That's like it's a downhill slope, I should say. It's not going to serve your young players. They've got to really start to play the compare and dare. Compare and dare to be the best that they can be. I was watching a video today. I think I've shared it on, it's on one of my Facebook pages at the moment, and it's certainly on my stories in Instagram, which is Mindset and Performance Coach KATHRYN is my Instagram. And if you are on Facebook in my Coaches of Athletes community and my Parents of Basketball Players community, I'm pretty sure I shared this earlier today, and it was Coach K, who used to be the incredible coach up at Duke University. And he was really comparing how two different players came to him. One of them was actually dubbed as the number one player in the nation, but his growth was at a different speed to a young man who also came to him. And I think he was maybe number 10 or something like that in the nation. And he ended up getting his NBA draft much quicker than the one that actually you would have thought would have got it. And the point of his video was players will develop at their own unique speed. So playing the compare and despair game and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be as good as XYZ is futile. So get them to stop it. Stop it straight away and start going, dare to be the best version of you that you can be in this moment. Now, when I was coaching Brad's original under 22 youth league, what I noticed, I went to their training and I watched and I went, every time they missed a shot, turned over the ball, anything, missed their 3-pointer, whatever, I could see that they were on the court, but they weren't really on the court because they were busy beating themselves up still in their head. So I came up with this term, which is basically a reset button. It's a reset to get them back in the game straight away. And that was their teammates would call out, flush it. And it was just a really quick, easy reset word for them to go, oh my goodness, let it go, move on. Let it go, move on. Is this making sense? It's really simple, but I tell you, it works. The second reason that athletes don't land that college scholarship is because they don't stand out to recruiters. I mentioned this before. Your athlete may have a fantastic highlight reel, but if they aren't good at communicating with their coach, if they're not good at receiving feedback and not taking it personally and thinking, oh, the coach doesn't like me, they're going to get lost in the noise because all those other people are wanting scholarships as well. So the pitfall is thinking, if I'm good enough, the recruiters are going to find me. I've just got to keep on being good enough. No, there is so much more to it than that. So be proactive. Make sure that your athlete is showing their individual personality and not just stats, not just I've got this percentage on my free throws and this is what I've done over the season, etc. They're far more interested in getting to know your player, okay? They want to know whether or not they're resilient. They want to know whether or not they're coachable. They want to know whether or not they're good at receiving feedback. They want to know whether or not they're actually a really good team player if it's a team sport. So be proactive. Now, here's the thing. They need to be proactive, not the parent and not the coach, even though the coach might reach out to someone in the first place. If you're going to answer all of the questions for your teenager, that shows that they don't have the confidence to speak up for themselves. So by all means, do the groundwork and then pass it over to them to show that they have the confidence and the communication skills and that they deserve that college scholarship. Reason number 3, they don't focus on their academic. They are so wrapped up in whatever sport or performing arts that they're doing. And bottom line is, if they think that their academics don't matter as much as how they're performing, they are in for a wake-up call. Grades equal eligibility. And the thing is that the discipline that they show in the classroom is definitely going to be mirrored and show up in whatever sport that they're playing. So point that out to them and go, okay, I know perhaps you're not as academic as your sister or your brother or whatever it might be, but do your absolute best to get the best results that you can get. Because first of all, coaches are not going to take them on if they're failing or getting D's. They're just not. Okay? Because it shows personality traits. Aside from whether they're academic or not, it shows whether or not they really have that discipline. Because it takes a lot of discipline to be really good at sport. Number 4, they can't handle adversity. All or nothing mindset, or perhaps they're allowing injuries to derail them. Can you relate to this one? Injuries is unfortunately part and parcel of being an athlete. I don't know anybody. I'm a former professional dancer, and before that, I was actually a gifted state level runner and softball and netball. Injuries are just part and parcel of it. And it's how we actually, the mindset of how we approach those injuries that can make or break us. So please encourage your players to reframe failure is just feedback. You've got to adopt a growth mindset versus a success mindset. And I always like to say bounce forward. Think about it. If you say bounce back, then you're not bringing the lessons with you, are you? You're going back to what you were like beforehand. Every single mishap, injury, stuff up, anything big really in life is there to teach us lessons. So go back and learn the lesson and then bounce forward instead of back. Yeah. So this is a sort of negative self-talk of a poor girl that's getting injured. I'll never recover in time to compete this season. As I said, it's part of the landscape. They are going to have injuries. It's their mindset that's going to determine whether they recover and come back stronger or not. When my daughter was playing club basketball for Brad's Manly Warringah Basketball Association. By the way, club basketball in Australia is very different to here. I believe here in the US, anyone can join a club and play. You can play in Australia, but if you want to be in a rep squad, which is representing your club, you have to be extremely good. So my daughter was in the 12 and unders, I believe, when a young girl on the court next to her fell. And I didn't see her fall, but I saw her writhing in pain. And she was in, I think, the 16 and unders at the time. And I ended up working with her because she had actually broken her arm. The poor thing had broken her arm in 3 places. It was like a banana. So they took her off the court. Thankfully, her mother knew a little bit about the power of the mind. So I had some coaching sessions with her. And I also, her mother had the great idea. Back then, I had a book, which was an audio book called Positive Ways to Transform Your Day. And so Luina, Zale's mum, had her listening to my audiobook on repeat while she was asleep. And I had her visualizing just before she went to sleep, just as she woke up, daydreaming through the day, that there were elves and goblins going down there and mending all of those bones and seeing the goblins and elves really mending it stronger than before she broke it. She went back to have the cast taken off. Oh, by the way, she also played the drums. And the people that actually put her arm in her cast said, well, it's highly likely you'll never play the drums again, and it's highly likely you're never going to play basketball again. I said to her, do not listen to that. Zale, do not listen to that. Your mind is powerful beyond your wildest imagination. She took it on board, and we had her back on the court in 3 months. This is something that her mum said, that she broke her arm, that she played the CD over and over and over all of the time, and we got her back. She got back to playing basketball. I think now she's married, and I'm not sure whether she's got children. This is quite a while ago. I've been doing this for quite a while. So injuries are going to happen, but it depends on your mindset or your player's mindset as to whether or not it's the end of them or actually the beginning of something even better. So this is what I taught Zale to say: I can and I will, just watch me. When people say you can't do something, just tune it out and go either in your head or out loud, I can and I will. Just watch me. Reason number 5 is they're not the whole package. The pitfall of this is if you've got a really talented athlete, for some reason, a little bit more when it comes to young boys than young girls, but I'm sure there are girls that fall into this category as well. Their ego is running the show. They think they are, I won't say the word, but pretty hot. And that is not what coaches are looking for. Also, if they're not so great on the sideline, when they're not playing, we're on the bench, or they're just not on the field, or whatever sport it is that your athlete plays, everybody is watching every move they make, especially if they've actually been noticed as a good, having potential to get a college scholarship. Everything they do is under a microscope. So if they're just on the sidelines, they're not cheering on their team, they're chatting away, they're on their phone, etc., not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So they have to understand that they have to be the whole package, not just the talent. So emphasize character, emphasize leadership, really taking leadership of their team if it's a team sport, or even leadership of self, that they're coachable, okay? If they think they know it all, no coach is going to want to work with them, and being a fantastically positive teammate. So they are the 5 reasons why a lot of athletes will not land that college scholarship, but there's a couple of others. I'll give you a couple of bonuses. Oh, yes. So here we go. Here is the ego on the court. I had a lot of fun getting ChatGPT to create this for me today. So it's like, the rooster, the head one on the team, thinks they're absolutely hot stuff. But coaches aren't looking for that. They're looking for someone that's coachable, that's resilient, and is a team-first athlete, not a narcissistic me-first athlete, and certainly not divas with large egos. The extra reasons that you might unknowingly be doing, and that's parents unintentionally, I'm sure you're not doing it intentionally, sabotaging your child's or teenagers' best efforts to land that college scholarship. What do I mean by that? I think I touched on it briefly, but also your behaviors are being watched by the coaches. So if you're on the sideline and you're trying to coach your child or teenager, I should say, instead of letting the coach your teenager, that's all being noticed. Okay? No one wants a pushy parent that thinks they know better than the coach, let's face it. Even if you've got a college scholarship when you were younger and you think you know better, just hand it over. I did a podcast a few weeks ago, and it was all about parents staying in your lane. Stay in your lane. Your job is to give them all of the opportunities that they can and encourage them. That's it. That's it. You're not their coach. Hand that over to the coach to do. The other thing that parents can unintentionally sabotage their players with is taking over. I mentioned it before, taking over instead of allowing your teenager to speak up for themselves. So if a recruiter comes to your game and they start asking your teenager questions, please let them answer. Okay? Don't butt in and think that you need to answer for them, because again, that's telling that recruiter that your teenager doesn't have the confidence to speak up. Not what they're looking for. The other thing is athletes not setting or maybe they set their goals, but they're not communicating that to their coach. Okay? So if your teenager is aspiring to either being on a varsity team or they're already on a varsity team and they want to get that college scholarship, you need to actually have a conversation with the coach. Don't think that the coach is going to come to you and go, you've got talent, you should consider, getting recruited. No, not you. Your teenager needs to let the coach know that this is something that they're aspiring to doing. And the other one that I actually mentioned a little while ago is the social media mistakes. Remember, your teenager's brain is under construction. They actually are not wired enough to think about the consequences of their behaviors. They can't think logically that, oh, if I do this, this is really not going to look good when it comes to applying to a particular college, or hoping that, going to an AAU tournament or whatever it might be in whatever sport that your teenager plays, because they're actually not capable. So you as a parent or as a coach need to really be instilling in them, because they're not going to think of it themselves. Okay? They think they're invincible. Didn't you think you were invincible when you were a teenager? Honestly, I have no idea how I stayed so safe as I did, because we used to hitchhike to the beach up in the back of these combi vans and things. I was like, oh my goodness, little did my parents know. So that's what I'm talking about, is their brain is under construction. So you cannot expect them to really think through logically the consequences of each choice and behavior that they're choosing. However, you can point it out to them. Okay, but they're not going to think of it themselves. So they're pretty much the 5 reasons plus a few extras. Remember, talent gets your teenager noticed, but mindset, discipline, and character is what's going to get them recruited. So they've got the talent, then they need to have all these other things to the basket of what is the package of them. What is their total package? Have they shown up to support their teammates? Do they take feedback well from their coach? Do you actually sit on the sidelines and just do your job, or do you interfere? All these different aspects are being noticed, folks. They are being noticed all the time. And the other one that really does, I want to reiterate is, if I'm talented, recruiters are going to notice me. No, you've got to get your highlight reels. You've got to be really proactive. You've got to send it out to all of the different colleges. You've got to really take charge. And when I say you, either you as a coach encouraging the family of whoever the player is you feel has that potential, or if you're the parent, you need to also be helping your teenager do that. And of course, the more the teenager is doing that, the more they're showing up with leadership qualities, which is what every coach wants on their team. So that's pretty much it. However, I do want to, here we go. Let's recover. Sorry, not recover. Let's just, what's the word? I'm not thinking that clearly on a Sunday evening. Recap, that's the word, recap. So there you got it. The 5 main reasons talented athletes miss out on scholarships. Their mindset holds them back. They don't stand out to recruiters. They don't keep their academics strong. They can't handle adversity and bounce forward. And they're not showing up as that whole package of what the coaches are looking for. Now, I'm super excited. I am in the process of creating my first app. It's called the Champions Mindset. And my very first course on there is all about mindset for teenage elite athletes that are aspiring to getting a college scholarship, or perhaps the first step is aspiring to being in a varsity team and then moving forward towards the college scholarship. So it's coming soon, Mastering Your Inner Game Mindset Method. And if you're watching this video and this is something that you're interested in, it's only application only. I will only be taking on young, elite teenage athletes that have already been recognized somewhat for their natural ability. And then we're going to work on all the mindset aspect so that they've got everything that they need to really show up and be the absolutely best that they can be. So if it's something you're interested in, please do comment below. Find me on social media. Facebook is Mindset and Performance Coach KATHRYN. Instagram is the same name. I believe I'm also on TikTok, but I don't spend a lot of time there, but my social media team certainly post everything over there. Or you could actually just reach out to KATHRYN at KATHRYNORFORD.com. And I'd love to end giving you a gift, which you'll hear about in just a moment, which is a copy of my free ebook, which is Mental Performance Mastery for Basketball Success. Now, I just need to reiterate, yes, I play. I coach a lot of basketball players and teams. I'm off to coach the Wagner College team over on the East Coast. I'm also heading up to Cornell to work with the track, field, and cross country athletes there. However, it's not just basketball that I work with, as you can see. I've worked with opera singers, musical theatre stars, full-time ballet students, swimmers, tennis players, you name it, every imaginable sport under the sun over the last 18 years. So even though the book says for basketball success, it's not. It's for success in any sport or in life itself. So thank you for joining me. I hope you found it useful. Please comment below and let me know what was your biggest takeaway, because it's really important for me to know what people are struggling with and what lands, etc. You possibly knew a lot of these things already, but it's interesting how we can know something, but we need to hear it a few more times to actually do anything about it. So I hope you found it valuable. If you did, please comment, share, and I look forward to seeing you next week when I'll be interviewing a guest. And stay tuned, because just right now, my producer is going to pop on something that you'll be able to go to a particular website and download a free copy of that book. Thanks again for joining me. Ciao for now.